Hello again. I've included a couple of links in the description which touch on topics that I've featured prolifically in this series of videos. The first one is an article. It's sourced off Yahoo Finance, and it's talking about the all-party parliamentary group describing the FCA as nakedly siding with lenders in formulating a compensation scheme for people who took on car finance, and the commission arrangements embedded in those contracts were not properly disclosed. And that's a valid observation, but I wonder with this group because they're very odd. They sort of ask the same questions and don't seem to learn from the process, because this is the what I've described as far back in the book Lost the Races in 2024 April. This is the secondary objective. This is victims being sacrificed on the altar of the secondary objective. And you see it in other forms. I noted that the fine levied on Barclays for the allegations against John in what the FCA suggests was tens of millions of pounds being passed through a client money account which should never have been opened. That was very, very light as well. And you're seeing really how the FCA is doing the government's work. The government's agreeing to cover them against any idea that they've catastrophically failed victims in multiple cases. And the idea is to support the growth objective. And this is just another manifestation of that. Of course, another incident would be the Woodford in some ways. The government have covered them on that in terms of not really asking for a proper investigation, because I guess that they know that the FCA were informed of Link's actions throughout the whole debacle, which led to the worst case scenario of clients seeing their assets subject to fire sales. And that's why, of course, the FCA couldn't really take open action against Link, because they would expose themselves in the process. And this is the other key thing about all these cases, why it has to be managed in this way. Because if you imagine the government are launching a campaign about encouraging stock market investment and taking greater risk with financial products, and in general having a more open attitude to risk for consumers, and if they saw the scale of these catastrophic failures, it would cause inconvenient questions to be asked. As I've said with WealthTech, and you could apply this to Woodford as well, and the car scandal too, is you can't understand how these things happen without first understanding the FCA's catastrophic failure. They are the two sides of the same coin, and it's why the regulatory system is suffering scandals in the way it does, because you have this horrendous conflict of interest between a regulator needing to show itself as discharging its statutory objectives whilst also being a prosecutor as well. Because and if you understand that the scandals can't be analysed without understanding the regulatory failures, you can see how that horrendous conflict of interest doesn't serve victims well. And that's the point I've made throughout this whole series of videos. The next is, I won't dwell on this too much, but referring to the atrocity in Southport. I know it's a very sensitive issue, and I wouldn't ever want to upset anybody in covering this, but the Sky News feature rightly identifies how the victims were, and their families, friends, and the whole community were devastated by it as well, were failed in multiple occasions. And I said at the time, drew your attention to Keir Starmer using a gross perversion of prejudice to say we can't delve into these issues now, when people were asking for answers, asking searching questions at the time. He tried to play this grossly perverse prejudice card, where he said that you can't delve into these issues now because effectively, despite this dreadful person being seen carrying out these atrocities and overwhelming evidence, he could seemingly walk free from court just by people asking logical questions of why it was allowed to ever happen. And it's this perversion of prejudice that's also, you also see it used prolifically by the FCA. I've covered that throughout the video and the book Lost to the Races, if you remember, saying that no, you can't ask why we failed, you can't ask why we didn't intervene, because it would prejudice the case, which is absolute nonsense. It's if somebody has misused client assets to their own gain, it wouldn't excuse it. The fact the regulator wasn't on form, it wouldn't justify it in any way at all. It might explain the ease of which it happened, hence this two sides of the same coin, but it wouldn't excuse it because it's a wrong thing to do. It's other people's property. And so these are important themes, not only in this this series of videos. It's important throughout society, and you really need to look out for these things, because they're used against you. They're used to suppress free speech. So in terms of prejudice, and I've linked that to the general rule of lawyers, not the rule of law. If people genuinely want their liberty, that's where they will find it, is taking on this gross perversion. And I'll give you another throwaway example. Over the weekend, I think it was reported that Shabana Mahmood was studying the Danish immigration system to try to get control over immigration in the UK, which is out of control. I'm not anti-immigration, I'm not racist, I'm just saying it's not being managed properly. Now, we're often told that the answer to our problems is repealing our obligations under the European Convention of Human Rights Bill, but Denmark have seemingly made a success by being part of that same architecture, and I've made that throughout the series of videos. We're being conned by your Generics, your Farages, and so on, who say that essentially that all your problems will be solved if we left this act. It's not. It's the rule of lawyers that's the problem. It's not the rule of law. And this is yet another example. You might have obviously caught the BBC's latest woes. That plays into everything I've told you in the book. When I wrote it, we don't have free speech. It's silly to pretend that we do, and we don't have media plurality. I think that's coming to the fore now. Right, that's it for now. Take care. There is a few things that I'm watching very carefully on the Epstein scenario, because there's some very interesting dynamics of how different individuals are looked at certain periods of time on that. So I may do something on that in the future. In the meantime, take care.